Well, I think there are many challenges, and that's what makes this such a big headache for Paris authorities. I think because it's such a multi-faced, complex problem that they need to solve here. Obviously, when they decided to have the Olympic Games here in Paris, they wanted to have sort of city games. They wanted the games to be in the city, in monuments, and really like for the locals and for spectators to be able to both experience the Olympic Games, but also experience the city. But this aspect, having Taekwondo underneath the Eiffel Tower, this has created many security hassles because how do you control the influx of people in an open area? So what they've done is that they have divided the city, or they will be dividing the city into 4 different zones. In the first zone, you'll only be able to go if you are an athlete or if you have an accreditation. In the second zone, you'll be able to go if you have a QR code stating that you either live in the area or you have a very important doctor's appointment in the area or so, whatever. And in these zones, you will need to have your bags checked and you'll need to have your pockets checked, etc. You need to be body searched. In the third zone, you'll be able to go if you have a QR code, so you need to sign up online. So you can't just randomly go to your favorite restaurant because you want to. And here you also need to be body searched. And then in the fourth zone, there'll be traffic restrictions. Obviously, in terms of security, that's just like the logistical hassle. But then there are also many other things like terror threats, the threats of cyber attacks. 3.5 million terror cyber attacks are expected. And actually, one of the really big issues for Paris organizers today is that they're lacking security personnel. So they are going to reinforce the police force in the Paris region, which is normally 36,000 to 73,000, by driving in people from other regions. They're also going to borrow police forces and security forces from other countries, but they're having a really hard time actually recruiting sort of what they call security agents, which are the people that are going to be scanning QR codes, checking, making sure that people, are in the right places. And it's estimated they're lacking 20,000 personnel. So what the authorities have been doing now is that they're driving a pretty massive recruitment campaign where they're basically paying people to get trained for 3 weeks just to be able to work for 2 weeks. And then, as you mentioned, of course, the international climate right now is pretty tense. And France, being no stranger to terror attacks and other threats, of course, this is something that authorities are keeping an eye on. And I think they're extremely well prepared. But of course, not everything can be anticipated with these things, and not all of the security plan details are actually available for us to know. But of course, because of course they're trying to keep their cards close to them.
Yes, indeed. Gosh, it sounds like quite the undertaking. Every Olympics we hear about the issue with homeless people. They're often rounded up. Paris is turning out to be no different, is it?
No, definitely not. So since the start of last year, they have been running what's called SAS programs, which are basically programs that relocate homeless people out of the city. So it's a voluntary relocation, it must be said, but basically what authorities do is that they wake people up in the middle of the night, people that are sleeping rough on the streets, and they give them 2 choices. Either they can sit on a warm bus and be driven somewhere else, or they can go somewhere else in Paris and sleep elsewhere on the streets. Of course, most people choose the first option, but the problem is, and where the authorities actually come under fire, is that once they get out into the different regions of France, which are not Paris, they get a temporary accommodation for 3 weeks. But after that, there's no plan with them. So they don't get any assistance in actually finding a job or finding accommodation. So what ends up happening, what local authorities say, is that these homeless people just end up homeless in another region. So quite literally, it is a relocation of the problem rather than a solution. And France does struggle with homelessness. It has the highest homelessness rate in Europe. So what local authorities are saying is that it's really problematic because they're already oversaturated in terms of what they can do for their homeless population in their regions, and now also having extra people to take care of, it's a burden for them. And for the homeless people who are obviously in very vulnerable situations, it doesn't really help to be in a rural provincial part of France where maybe opportunities are less frequent and less easy to get to.
Yeah. What about the preparations for the venues and facilities for the athletes? Are they on track? Do you think that will run smoothly?
Yes, so that is one thing that organizers have completely under control. I've visited the Olympic Village and many of the stadiums. Everything is ready. There are a few things, I think there are 3 out of 70 things that are running a little bit behind, but it's nothing major. Everything is definitely getting on track. And I know that the Olympic Village, the keys have been handed to the Paris Organizing Committee. So they are right now decorating it and getting it ready. And other than that, well, the different arenas, well, the Paris Olympic Games decided that they didn't want to build a lot of new arenas because previous Olympic Games obviously have been very criticized for building structures that then afterwards weren't used anymore. So what they decided to do was to only use majoritarily use only existing infrastructure, and then, like I said earlier, have many of the smaller competitions like taekwondo or fencing at Paris monuments. So for the stadiums, they're ready because they were already there. And for the temporary venues, which will be built around the city, they're gonna build that a little bit late, so to say, because they don't want to block off roads that locals have to use for too long prior to the game.
Yeah, Parisians can get a little grumpy with people and not being allowed to go through their daily life. Do you think they're going to welcome the tourists and the athletes? But I guess the biggest issue is going to be all these security checks and QR codes just to go about your normal day's business.
Well, I think I can safely say without offending anyone that, the French have a reputation of complaining. And I think having to have a QR code and register and all of these things, that will definitely be something they will complain about. But on the other hand, I was here in 2015 when there were the horrific terror attacks. And I think the French population, I think they do understand and they remember the period afterwards where police were patrolling the streets. Very often we had the military very present in the public scene. So I think even though they are complaining, I think also they do understand that it's very much needed and it's for our own sake. So I think once the games get here, it will be a little point of contention, but
they'll be
on the same. Yeah,
they'll do it with their Parisian chic.
Exactly. And they'll be excited that the whole world is watching the city. So, and hopefully for a good reason.
Exactly. Such a beautiful city it is. Great to have you on. Thanks so much.
Thank you.